I'm finding it very difficult to reconcile what you're here for with the person that I'm talking to. Are you a mad axe killer?
No, I had nothing to do with this.
My name is Chris Porco. I was just called by the Times Union saying that my parents were found dead this afternoon. I was wondering if you had any information.
Hang on the line for me, okay?
Thank you.
To hit someone repeatedly with an axe, that's serious stuff.
Christopher Porco is the most unlikely killer I've ever interviewed. Your father told a co-worker that he thought you were a sociopath.
I don't believe he meant it.
There's a 55-year-old white male down on the ground.
I saw Chris at all stages of his life.
He's unresponsive?
He's unresponsive.
And as a personal friend of the family, I believe him to be innocent.
I've been granted 1 hour with a man found guilty of wielding an axe to kill his father and butcher his mother.
There was just blood everywhere. Blood on the ceiling, and the bed was just soaked with blood.
The thing that bothers me about all this is you don't really show much remorse.
Here you are as a convicted murderer. How does that make you feel?
It's kind of a deep, seething anger that's not really expressed day to day.
Now, for the first time since his incarceration, he's speaking out. Porco insists he can prove he's an innocent man.
There's no doubt in my mind that Christopher Porco killed his father.
It's not our burden to demonstrate who did this. The point is, it was not Christopher.
You know, you're making me think about this. If you're guilty, then you just played me for the last 2 hours. But if it wasn't you, who was it?
We certainly have someone in mind.
Christopher, thank you for your time today. What are you hoping to achieve from this interview?
Well, I think it's important to try and lay out facts and information that never came to light originally, 15 years ago. So figured now was the time to kind of begin the process.
If you're innocent, you're the victim of one of the worst miscarriages of justice I can think of. If you're guilty, you are a despicable axe murderer. How do you convince me?
I was convicted. There's a reason why I was convicted. It was because the prosecution put on a compelling case, and in large part, we didn't do our job.
Or you were convicted because you did it.
I have the luxury of knowing that's not true.
In 2005, life seemed pretty good for 21-year-old Christopher Porco. He was in his junior year as an economic major at the University of Rochester and a member of the Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity. But all that was about to change on the morning of November the 15th, when detectives arrived at his parents' home 200 miles away in Albany and discovered a scene of unimaginable carnage.
911, what's the problem?
There's a 55-year-old white male down on the ground.
The front door was ajar, but when I did stick my head in, immediately I saw a body laying there. His eyes were wide open and glassy, and I got to the top of the stairs, and I saw a female laying crossways in the bed. She had these very, very large hack marks on her forehead and her jaw, and I realized she was still alive.
At this moment, Porco was 200 miles away in Rochester, where he says he was completely unaware of what had happened to his parents. Let's turn to the phone call you get telling you that your parents have been attacked. Describe that moment. It's every child's nightmare.
One of my fraternity brothers came into where I was and told me my phone had been ringing in my room. I think it was the Albany Times Union. And she asked me if I had any comment on my parents' murder that day.
That's how you were told?
Yep. And I kind of fell back into the chair and asked her what she was talking about. She seemed somewhat embarrassed that I didn't know.
My name is Chris Porco. I was just called by the Times Union saying that my parents were found dead this afternoon. I was wondering if you had any information.
Whereabouts are you?
I'm at school in Rochester, New York.
Okay, you're in Rochester?
Yes.
Okay. Hang on the line for me, okay?
Thank you.
I mean, I've heard the tapes of these calls.
Yeah.
What is most striking to me is how calm you are. You know, you've just been told that both your parents might have been brutally murdered, but you're responding as if you're ringing up because some milk was taken off the doorstep.
I don't know if I characterize it in that way. By the time I made that call, I didn't believe that anything had happened to anybody I knew.
A few minutes later, a detective calls Christopher and confirms his father is dead and his mother is in a critical condition. Porco is then asked to call back, unaware that his conversation is being recorded.
Hey, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's better. I don't have the static anymore. You gonna go right to Albany Med?
I don't know. I don't even know where my mom is, but...
Yeah, she is at Albany Med.
Okay. Do you know her condition?
No, because I haven't talked to her. Because when you get there, I'll come and see if there's anything I can do for you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Once the police confirm it, why do you stay calm? I'm not saying you should have been hysterical, but there's no sense of panic, there's no sense of fear, there's no sense of turmoil, of rising stress or anything.
It's not something that sinks in, that registers. And it didn't for a long period of time. It's almost like you're kind of floating through interactions with people.
I mean, a cynic would say that the reason you were so calm was that you already knew that because you were the one who had done it.
Sure. I think that everyone reacts to things differently. Typically, I'm not a hysterical person. To me, in my mind, I was thinking, this is not accurate, this is wrong.
We were at the hospital and Christopher came in. For lack of a better word, I would say he was in shock. And within a few minutes after he got there, two detectives approached him and said, "We would like to talk with you."
What Christopher doesn't know at this point is that Detective Bowdish has already spoken to his mother.
Was she coherent? Did you speak? Should you communicate?
Your mother was still alive, and thank God she stayed alive, albeit with terrible injuries. And they asked whether she knew the person who did this.
I looked down at her and I asked her if she could hear me, and she indicated with her head that she nodded up and down, yes.
They asked if it was your brother, and she said no.
I then said, "Did Christopher do this to you?" And she clearly shook her head, yes.
In the immediate aftermath, your mother not only identified the person as being someone she knew, but specifically nodded twice when she was asked if it was you, her son.
There are varying, I would say, descriptions as to what happened.
The attack happened upstairs in the bedroom, but Peter got up and walked and trailed that blood himself going around the house. It was one of the most astounding things that we heard, that he could be struck with an axe and dying, and part of him was still trying to get up, make the coffee, get his lunch together, do the routines you do in the morning before you go to work, not realizing perhaps because of the trauma that he was dying, which he did probably moments later.
In my mind, I just couldn't believe that, number one, that this had happened. Number two, that, I was looking at the sun for this whole thing.
I'm finding it very difficult to reconcile what you're here for with the person that I'm talking to. I could be talking to a regular guy in the bar who comes over as a perfectly normal human being. Yet whoever committed this crime is not a normal human being.
I would agree with that.
Did you ever imagine that you would end up where you are today?
Oh, no. I don't think I ever met anyone who went to jail until I was in jail.
The Porcos were what you would call a Norman Rockwellian family. I mean, they were really just kind of the epitome of the successful middle class, very kind and loving, really nothing to mar the perfect picture.
Peter Porco was very well known in the legal community as a popular law clerk. Joan Porco was a well-known teacher, and Christopher Porco was not someone who was on anyone's radar.
No violence, no abuse, no reason, certainly from their point of view, no reason that you would feel murderous towards them.
Of course not.
But the truth is, in the year before the attack, Peter and Joan Porco are having a difficult time with their 21-year-old son, Christopher.
The last time that I spoke with Peter was on the Friday before. And one of the things that came up was the financial problems that Chris had created. He had forged Peter's signature to be a co-signer on a loan.
I paid for a car with a loan that was, I signed a check with my dad's name.
$17,000.
To co-sign the loan.
Christopher seems to get off on the idea that he's getting over on his parents. He likes to exploit their trust.
In the email exchanges with your father, in particular, in the run-up to what happened, it's clear that your fraudulent behavior, your thieving nature, has now extended to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars.
Yep.
His father is calling him out. He wants him to come home and have a conversation about this. And basically, the jig is up. The stuff's about to hit the fan. Christopher Porco cannot talk his way out of this one more time.
You had personal animus with your parents at the time over the discovery about the fraudulent behavior. There's an argument that you had motivation, which was this financial scandal of blown up in your face. You know, you're a serial fraudster, and your father's challenging you about this, and you're lying to him repeatedly, refusing to take any responsibility for what's happened.
That's true.
Peter Porco insists his son comes home and comes clean about his criminal behavior. Just 10 days later, Peter is found dead. Your father told a co-worker in the week before that he thought you were a sociopath.
Yeah.
Why would he have said that?
I don't believe he meant it. He was exasperated at the time because he couldn't understand why I was behaving that way. He was kind of venting, I think, at the time.
But he did call you a sociopath.
Yeah, he did.
What's your understanding of what a sociopath is?
Basically somebody with no emotion.
Somebody incapable of feeling guilt, remorse, empathy.
Yeah.
I've interviewed sociopaths.
Sure.
I don't know if you are one, but certainly the sociopaths I've interviewed are very capable of putting on a good act.
Sure.
They're very capable of sounding very plausible. They tend to be quite intelligent. They tend to, in the interview process, which we're doing now, they can be very convincing.
Is Christopher Porco so practiced in his role-playing, in his ability to gain trust, to manipulate, to exploit the trust of others, that he is simply playing the role like an Academy Award-winning actor of what he thinks an innocent person would behave like?
Are you a sociopath?
No, absolutely not.
Are you capable of real emotion? I mean, you didn't show much emotion when you were told that your parents had both been bludgeoned by a mad axeman.
Well,
You say it's down to you not being a very emotional person.
I'm not.
I mean, a sociopath is capable of killing people and feeling no remorse or guilt, or even admitting doing it. You accept that?
I mean, I know that's possible, sure.
Right. So you accept your behavior at the time was sociopathic.
I think it could have been interpreted that way.
A viewer watching this will go, so he admits he was being sociopathic. His reaction is quite sociopathic. And whoever did this was probably a sociopath. I'm doing the maths and it doesn't look great. And the problem with everything that you've been saying to me is this is exactly how a sociopath would play me if he was trying to persuade me of his innocence and he had done it.
The day after the homicide, my son was born at Albany Medical Center, and that's where Joan Porco was undergoing surgery at that time. She underwent 12 hours of surgery.
When they find Peter dead downstairs, they go upstairs, they find his wife Joan, who's still in the bed, and the axe itself was found there at the foot of the bed. And she was in very, very bad shape, but still alive and breathing, remarkably.
They had a police guard on her, in part because at that point Christopher Porco was a suspect because she nodded affirmatively when asked if Christopher had done this.
Due to the massive head injuries sustained by Joan Porco, prosecutors can't rely on her identification alone to convince a jury that Christopher is the attacker. They need to prove he made the 400-mile round trip to his parents' house and back to his university in a single night. One of the points which I think is in your favor of this is there's no footage at all that was found of your Jeep, a very distinctive yellow Jeep, driving on the thruway at the correct time Sunday night into Monday morning. And they believe you must have stopped to refuel at some stage, but there's no evidence.
The police spent countless hours pulling security camera footage from gas stations, from places all over the capital region, the Albany area.
Rest stops were checked, Dunkin' Donuts were checked. And not only was there no evidence that he ever refueled, there was no evidence of his presence, period.
But the neighbor, Marshall Goki, saw your yellow Jeep in the driveway at 4 a.m.
I know my car was not there.
Why would the neighbor lie about you?
There's sort of a backstory with him. I know that he's wrong.
I had one of my sergeants go to meet with the neighbor up the street. They were aware of the yellow Jeep because it was racing up and down the street during the summer, and they were upset over it because their kids might get hurt. He knew it was that particular yellow Jeep in the driveway. It was very fresh in his mind. It was.
You have an individual who was aware of what the police suspected. One of his in-laws worked for the police department, and he was in a position to help.
Well, well, you've certainly been implying that the police have been working on a concerted effort to discredit you and to persuade witnesses of your guilt.
Mm-hmm.
You said that one of the detectives, Detective Arduini, had a vested interest in disliking you because of something to do with his daughters, that you dated two of his daughters, is that right?
Briefly dated.
Christopher had some sort of a relationship with one of the detective's daughters, and I don't know the details of it, but whatever it was, the detective did not like Chris.
Him and his wife used to take their dog to the veterinarian where I worked, and I found out later that he had encouraged the veterinarians to fire me.
And that was told to me by the veterinarians.
Do you think the personal animosity he had for you extended to him directing witnesses? It's a pretty serious allegation to make against a detective.
Yeah.
That he was directing witnesses to think that you were guilty, and therefore they must have seen the yellow Jeep rather than them volunteering it.
I think that his involvement was critical.
No, in all the dealings that I had with Detective Arduini, he wasn't biased at all. He was approaching the investigation as we were, keeping his mind open to all possibilities.
But he died right before trial. He was never subject to cross-examination. And he is the one that secured the statement of John Fallon, who was one of the toll collectors, who claimed to remember the yellow Jeep.
How do you explain the toll booth operators who also believe they saw you?
It's very convenient that you have three individuals who remember one car to the exclusion of all others, and it happens to be the car that they're being questioned about.
Right. But also it's very convenient if you're you to say that the three people who all independently say they saw your car, that they've all decided for some reason that they're going to nail you. That they're going to pretend they're going to pretend they saw your yellow Jeep, even when according to you, it was never there.
I don't believe it's that simple.
Why would they all be so wrong?
There's a lot more information about these witnesses that was not used at trial.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you think in each case they're discredited?
I believe they will be, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh, shucks. Let's see if we can straighten this out. The problem is he never sways from that impassive storytelling nice guy.
Don't worry, we'll come into the next bit in a minute. How long have we got, chaps?
At first, it's very impressive.
25, 30 minutes.
Perfect. That's great.
But after an hour, it's really suspicious.
Were you aware of that axe?
Sure.
You knew it was there?
I had split with my dad on more than one occasion.
So you knew it was there, you knew where it was kept?
Yes.
Anybody else?
I mean, it wasn't something we really advertised. It was sitting it was right next to the door as you came in.
So it's a small number of people that would have known it was there before. You accept that?
Well, you're assuming that whoever did this didn't walk in and see it as they walked in.
No, I'm not making any assumptions. I'm just saying that the number of people who would have known in advance
of course,
that the axe was there was very small.
That's very true, yes.
All the training that we had, the police have regarding homicide and violent crime, this type of crime, it tells us that it's someone close, that it's not a stranger attack.
The attack on your parents was frenzied. It was brutal.
It's the worst thing you could ever do to someone, I think. It's obviously someone who was very angry. It was a personal thing.
Right, it's a personal thing by somebody who hated your parents so much they wanted to obliterate them.
I agree. I'm not sure about hate. I don't know. But I know anger. There's no doubt there was anger in what happened.
The fact that whoever did this got out without leaving any DNA, any blood evidence, not even fingerprints on the axe, really shows that it's not a random stranger crime.
Detectives are in no doubt the intruder had carefully planned and executed the attack. But some of the details at the crime scene were surprisingly familiar to them. 2 years before, Peter Porco had reported what appeared to be a series of break-ins at the house, in which 2 laptops were stolen.
When I investigated a couple of years prior to the homicide investigation, the front windows were pried open and there was this long slit mark in the cut in the screen to unlock the window and get it open. When the homicide occurred, there was a similar slit in the screen. It kind of made me think, geez, I've seen this before,
We didn't learn and get evidence that it was in fact Chris Porco who stole those computers until we got this homicide investigation. We learned that Chris Porco had eBay accounts. We were able to trace one of his sales, the sale of Jones' laptop, to a kid from San Diego, California.
And you just took these laptops when you were at the home, or did you break in?
When I was home.
Yep. But you allowed your parents to think somebody else had done it?
Yes. Yep.
I mean, that is a pretty unsavory thing to do to your parents, because it makes them think they've had
absolutely
somebody intruding in the house.
Absolutely. To me, what I did was despicable and wrong, and to some people maybe unforgivable, but the attack on my parents is a whole different category of horrible.
There is another piece of evidence that seems to point directly towards Christopher's guilt. Peter and Joan Porco had installed a home security system after the break-ins. On the night of the murder, that system was deactivated. Now, whoever did it broke in using the alarm master code that I believe was only known to 6 people. Your parents, Uncle John, your godmother Margaret, and you and your brother. 6 of you knew that.
Well, it's correct that those are the people that knew the code.
Right, so how could somebody have got into the house using the master code if it wasn't one of the 6 people?
I would not say that the person gained entry to the house at that time or using a code.
But the alarm records show that it was on at the time. You're saying that was faulty?
No, I'm saying that the alarm was turned off at 2 something in the morning. Most likely my dad, if I had to guess.
Why would you do that? Why would your dad get out of bed at 2:45 in the morning and turn off the alarm?
We don't know.
Given that they believe intruders have been repeatedly breaking in to steal their possessions, and they've intensified security to combat that, here's what I don't get about what you're saying.
Sure.
You want us to think that your father gets out of bed at 2:14 a.m., goes down and deactivates the alarm to the house, notwithstanding the fact they put it there because they believe there's somebody constantly breaking in, stealing their possessions. What part of that makes sense?
My dad had a habit of turning the alarm off and forgetting to rearm it. That was not something that...
But why would he get out of bed at 2:14 and do it?
To let the dog out.
At 2:14?
Most likely. I think that's probably what happened, yeah. He was 11 years old at the time and needed to go out sometimes. That was not unusual.
We subpoenaed the records for the alarm And for months and months and months, it was the same pattern. There was never, over months and months and months of records, never a single time when that alarm was deactivated in the middle of the night.
Just as detectives had noted 2 years earlier, the screen on the window was again cut to allow it to be opened. And although the alarm had been switched off using the master code, the killer had nevertheless decided to smash up the control pad.
Chris Porco set the stage for those burglaries in 2002 and 2003. That's the exact same thing he did in the homicide scene. So the pad was smashed to make it look like a stranger had done that. But the brains of the alarm system in the basement had already registered at 2:14 a.m. that the master code had been used to deactivate the alarm.
I'll be honest with you, I don't know what to think. You don't come across as a mad axe killer, and yet I know that's what you're here for.
Yeah.
I have a sequence of events before this happened of you being a liar, a fraudster, treating your parents despicably by your own admission, treating them inhumanly, making them in fear of their lives, making them bolster security because of intruders that didn't exist. And I just have to look at you, as viewers will be, and think, is this guy capable of taking an axe in his hand and brutally murdering his father, and then trying to brutally murder his mother, including axing her in the head and face? And that's the question people will be asking. Are you capable of doing that? Are you a mad axe killer?
No, I had nothing to do with this.
But if it wasn't you, who was it?
I mean, something's got to pop into your head a little bit. Who would you guess?
Why is Christopher Porco doing this interview now? Well, he has an appeal going. He has some lawyers working on it. He wants a new trial, hopefully to have his conviction overturned. And the greatest thing he has going for him is the love and support of his mother.
Shortly after the horrific attack on Joan Porco, she recovers consciousness and changes her story. She now believes her son to be innocent and appeals to the court to be merciful at his sentencing.
I understand that the law requires you to impose a lengthy prison sentence. However, you do have discretion, and I implore you to use that discretion to keep the sentence as short as possible. Please allow Christopher the opportunity to obtain freedom in my lifetime. I believe him to be innocent.
What about your mother? How often does she come and see you?
She's been a number of times. We speak almost every day.
I mean, the extraordinary thing is that your mother says she has no recollection at all of what happened that night. She obviously, with the way that she responded to questions in the moment by the police that attended, that's part of the reason that you're here convicted. But she has defended you publicly ever since, whilst acknowledging she has no memory of what happened.
Yes.
She lost her husband, someone she loved very deeply and was very happy with. A mother's instinct might be in that circumstance that I don't want to lose a son as well. You might do everything in your power to try and do that and operate under a form of self-denial, simply because it's your son.
I think that's very possible.
I think the biggest mystery of this case is whether Joan Porco knows that her son attacked her or not.
You know, she's my mother.
I mean, all mothers want to believe their son.
Of course, she's my mother. She loves me unconditionally. And I have no doubt that if she believed I had done this, she would still love me.
I mean, that's extraordinary.
It is. It is.
She would still forgive you, you think?
Forgive? I don't know. I think she would still love me.
If Joan were here speaking, in my mind, I think that she would reiterate that she is absolutely convinced that Christopher is innocent.
If she doesn't want her son to be in prison, then she might just pretend she doesn't remember. It's a possibility, right?
I take some offense to that.
I just say it's a possibility.
She's an honest person. She would absolutely not lie if she knew. There's no doubt that she She does not remember.
Has she ever asked you, Christopher, did you do this?
It's a good question. I don't believe so directly. She may have at one point. I don't believe so.
She's never asked you?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I don't know.
If Christopher Porco can convince his mother that he's factually innocent, it gives him the confidence to believe that he might convince you. But what I see is a psychopath who is exploiting a mother's love.
You come across as thoughtful, sensitive, intelligent, articulate. But if you're guilty, then you just played me for the last 2 hours. Here's the other problem I have. No one else has ever been found. There was no evidence of anybody else being in the property.
That's not true.
Well, who did they discover had been there? Who could have done this?
Well, there was forensic evidence from at least one other person.
And was that person investigated?
No.
So that person could still be out there?
They are. You know, we have a great system in our country. It's probably the best in the world, but it's adversarial.
The public still does not know much about this case that I feel resembles the truth. Ultimately, I have faith in the system that my father held so dear, and I'm confident that with time, wrongs will be righted.
And when you say we have a great system in this country, you're sitting here claiming to be a completely innocent man.
It's not perfect.
Why would you think it's a great system if you've been framed for something you didn't do?
I wouldn't say framed, I wrongfully convicted, but
Isn't that the same thing? Christopher is preparing a new appeal with the full support of his mother. He hopes to prove not only that he is innocent, but to reveal who he believes committed the murder. You know, you're making me think about this. But if it wasn't you, who was it?
We certainly have someone in mind.
Who is that?
It's someone who had a personal connection to my father through work. Someone who expressed a lot of anger right during this time frame through his lawyer, who we've spoken to.
I am aware of a direct threat that was made to Peter. I don't know the details of the threat. I don't know who made the threat, but it raised the thought in Peter's mind of having a gun in the office.
And you think he did it?
I know that he had a motive.
What was the motive?
He felt that my father was meddling in a family court case that involved him. There may have been other personal issues involved that I don't think it's appropriate for me to discuss.
Have you told the police to investigate this other person?
No.
Why not?
Well, they wouldn't really be interested in doing that right now.
I find that extraordinary. So
you have to understand when this information became known to us.
Yeah.
It was in the past several years.
Hang on. I just need to understand why, if you were told several years ago that there was somebody that may have done this to your parents, who's still there and you know who it is.
We do.
But you wouldn't even tell the police?
That's part of the process.
Yeah, but you're stretching my credulity here. Secondly, why would you not put it in your extremely lengthy, detailed process of appeal?
I'm sensitive about publicly accusing an individual of murder without having pretty conclusive evidence that he's responsible.
You know this person?
I've never met him.
You know who it is? Christopher doesn't want to publicly name this person, who was the partner of one of Peter Porco's work colleagues. We took that name to the police.
Did you ever investigate the name?
I never even heard that name.
Don't remember. Honestly. Sorry.
Nothing comes to mind.
No. It honestly doesn't. Sorry.
If there was a direct threat against Peter and we were aware of that, that would have been pursued and investigated. Nothing even remotely pointed toward this being anyone other than Chris.
Like we discussed earlier, it's very clear there was anger behind this. I think this was an intentional act by someone who knew, who they were after and what they were doing.
So you didn't put this man's name in your appeal document?
Not yet.
Do you intend to?
Hopefully at some point.
trust me, if you think somebody else has gotten away with the murder of your parents, you want everyone to know their name. But he's polite. He's like, I don't want to. I know what it's like to be falsely accused. I want to take care of his due process rights and not name him because this person does not exist.
Do we have a person in mind? Yes, we do. Did that name just come out of the ether? No, it did not. But like I said, it's not our burden to demonstrate who did this. The point is it was not Christopher.
Here's my problem with this. I'll be honest with you. I don't know what to think. You're very convincing. You're very plausible. You're intelligent, as I said before. You clearly know all the details of the case.
I've lived it for
15 years to talk it through. Yeah. I also understand from your appeal and the detail of the appeal that there are lots of questions that remain unanswered about this.
There definitely are.
Christopher, it's been a fascinating interview.
Yeah, thank you.
I honestly don't know what to think. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
As you've discovered, we want to be fair and open-minded about this.
Well, that's all I really want.
Yeah, we're just about trying to get to the truth.
And I think it's important to recognize that there's a reason why I got convicted. And it's not an easy thing to kind of look in the mirror and say, like, you're an asshole, you know?
Christopher Porco is obviously highly intelligent. He's got no record of violence. And the questions I have to ask myself are two, really. One, is he smart enough to have covered his tracks if he did do this? Because there's hardly any evidence linking him to this crime. I think he is. He definitely is smart enough to have done that. Secondly, is someone like him capable of taking an axe and attacking his parents as they lay in bed? That's the question I can't answer. I still don't know.
I'm Emily Campagno. As a lawyer, I've spent many hours with convicted felons inside the walls of prisons. Those are conversations and experiences you never forget. Now, Piers Morgan is joining me here in a slightly less intense environment to take you inside the killer interview. Christopher Porco, you've called him the most unlikely killer you've ever interviewed. Tell us why.
Most killers I've interviewed over the years, they're quite rough. They're obviously dangerous people. You can tell. They have a look, they have a manner, they have a way about them where you just feel menace exuding from their every pore. Christopher Porco isn't like that. He's calm, he's intelligent, he is extraordinarily normal to meet and to interview. He's softly spoken. He's not overly emotional. He's not stupid. He's a bright guy. And you put it all together and you think, is it really conceivable that somebody like this would go to his own parents' bedroom with an axe and murder one and nearly murder the other? And that was the bit for me which I found very hard to definitively prove, because the evidence against him is all circumstantial. There's nothing actually forensic which nails him. And so you couple the kind of person he is with that, and it doesn't quite add up. Honestly, I did not think I was looking at a murderer. Nothing about him said, I'm a savage axe killer, let alone of his own parents. And it's a fascinating story because it obviously killed his father. He's convicted of killing his father. His mother survived and she believes him. She thinks he's completely innocent. So there you have a situation where he's convicted of taking an axe to his own mother and she survived, but she believes him, thinks he's been completely set up, could never ever hurt her. And again, you think, if she's that sure, did he?
What was your first impression of him? And did that change ever?
My first impression was my last impression. he can't have done this. Honestly, he was just polite. He was calm. He was nothing like any prisoner I'd seen inside a maximum security prison in America. Nothing about him said to me, he's a mad axe man. Now, I know from criminal history, there are people that do despicable things who look and sound exactly like Christopher Porco. So I'm not completely deluded to the possibility he might have done it. But when you add the lack of any real forensic evidence proving that he did it, everything is circumstantial. And some of it's quite compelling circumstantial. You know, he did steal things from his parents' home. He did know how the locks worked, etc., etc. There's lots of things you could point to and say, yeah, I mean, look, you know, all the prison officers afterwards, I said to them, what do you think? I can't make my mind up. They went, oh, he did it. They were sure. I wasn't so sure. And he said to me his defense team had found another suspect. I'll be very interested to see how that investigation plays out. Because it might be he's the victim, as I said to him, of a terrible miscarriage of justice. And what a miscarriage that would be.
Do you feel that you are a good detector if someone is lying?
I think as a journalist of 30 odd years, I've always thought journalists, lawyers, and police detectives have a similar skill set. You're a lawyer, I'm a journalist, we know detectives. It's all the same kind of thing, right? You're going down the same process, and you encounter a lot of good liars, and your lie-ometer, if you like, gets ever more finely tuned. So I think I can normally tell a good liar pretty quickly. And in his case, he was very consistent in his story. He was very emphatic. He never lost his temper like some of them do with me. He never hung himself on details. Now, he's highly intelligent, so whether he just had prepared for it in such a minuscule way that he could be that plausible, or he genuinely didn't do it.
You mentioned earlier the menace that you can feel emanating from killers. Do the packages change, or do the packages all look the same?
They can come in any packages. For all I know, you could be a terrible serial killer.
I'm not. And you can tell I'm not.
No, but it's you know, in a way, I'm joking, but I'm also making the point that it can be anybody. In my experience of interviewing really bad people, they can come in all walks of life. They can come in all, you know, from any kind of societal class, any form of intelligence, very intelligent, very stupid, you know, very well off, very poor. There's no real connecting force that links killers. If you're in a gang, that's different. You know, crimes of passion, I always park to one side too, because in a crime of passion, they tend to be instantaneous and full of regret afterwards. These are different, these killers I interviewed, particularly the serial killers. It's a methodical, systematic destruction of other human beings. And they're fascinating. Do you still feel homicidal urges?
No.
Never?
Well, if you push my trigger, you're done.
Robert Spachowski is a serial killer unlike any I've encountered before. I mean, what you're saying is if I press the wrong trigger with you in this interview,
absolutely,
you might feel homicidal.
Absolutely.
He's a psychotic, a soulless human being.
Spachowski, he's like a lightning bolt that you can't see coming.
His crimes made him notorious. I'm told Spachowski can be volatile, but he's also unique.
The prototypical serial killer kills strangers, but he killed people that he knew.
She was making fun of him, so he lost it, and he choked her to death.
That's really strange. And it's not a one-off like a domestic. This kept happening and happening and happening.
He said that he saw her as a demon coming after him. So he found something that he could strangle her with and put her out of her misery.
I've been given 1 hour with Spachowski to try and understand a serial killer who murders only those he's closest to.
I did not kill her. And the people I did kill, they didn't suffer.
How can I believe you?
I don't care if you do, you don't.
The chances of somebody walking in as infamous as Robert Spachowski admitting to murder are the same as winning the lottery.
During the 90s, Spachowski terrorized his neighborhood in Rochester, upstate New York, killing friends, neighbors, and even lovers. For almost 15 years, he played a game of cat and mouse with detectives, but they could never catch him. Until one morning in November 2005, when Robert Spachowski did something unheard of. He turned himself in.
It's November the 8th. I'm working in the homicide unit, and it's an average day for me. I'm coming in the front doors of the public safety building. I walk in, I look towards the headquarters desk.
And we see a male white standing there. He looked shaggy. He looked like a street person, possibly a crack addict.
When I first see him, I noticed the big forehead and the shady hair, and he looks like an old-time hippie.
And Glenn and I look at each other and do a double take at him and realize, although we hadn't seen him in years, it was him. And whatever he's saying is likely to be true.
He said it was his friend, it's someone he got high with, and that he doesn't remember, but she was dead.
And everything changed right at that moment.
In 2005, you walked into a police station and you confessed
Absolutely.
to all 4 murders that you were convicted of. And you knew all your victims, which
Yes,
again is unusual. These were people,
absolutely.
in some cases, they were personal relationships you were having.
Absolutely.
I know previously you've tried to say you don't want to be known as a serial killer.
Okay. Yeah.
Why?
In my mind's definition, a serial killer is something that's predatory. It's premeditation. The people I kill, it wasn't predatory and it wasn't premeditation. When those people died that day, I didn't wake up and say, I think I'm going to kill this person today. My killings were not like this, or I didn't even know they were going to happen. And the reason I'm doing this interview with you, because I don't want to be seen as a mass serial killer. I don't want to be.
But Robert, that's what you are.
I know, but I didn't mean it to evolve.
There's nothing you can do about that. You can't tell the world you're not a serial killer when you have killed multiple people.
Yes. Well,
you are obviously a serial killer.
Then what I'm here is trying to say is why I killed those people. Right. It's not about how I killed them, it's why.
Unlike other serial killers that I've interviewed who pick on random strangers they don't know and kill them, Spachowski picked on people he did know, people he cared about, perhaps even loved.
This is Lake Avenue in the city of Rochester. We're going to head over to the address where Adrienne Berger's body was found in the apartment that she lived in at the time of her death, and that was July of 1991.
Adrienne Berger, she was your on-off girlfriend.
Yes.
For 1 year. Now, you admit to killing her.
Absolutely do, sir.
Did you love this person?
Well, not in love with her, but I cared for her. She was a friend of mine, absolutely.
This was where Adrienne Berger lived at the time of her death. When we arrived at the scene, it was a hot, humid July day. There were several flies attached to the window, both inside and out of the residence. So at that point, we realized that she had probably been there a while, or at least decomposed fast.
It was the dog days of summer, I'll tell you that. You know, her body was parboiled, actually. They couldn't determine whether she was a male or female. She was so deteriorated from, decay.
Robert is absolutely lucky in this case. It was the fact that they couldn't tell for sure that she'd been murdered that let him off the hook.
Why did you kill someone who you had a relationship with?
It was compulsive. I didn't think about killing her. I just wrapped my hands around her throat and strangled her to death. It was like, when I was doing it, it was like, when you turn the TV off, there's that little white little dot you see in the middle of the TV. Well, that's what I was experiencing when I was taking her gift of life. That's all I remember, and I also remember thinking, this is taking too long.
During his confession, he said that they were on the couch and they were attempting to have sex together, but he remained flaccid. He couldn't get an erection, and that she was making fun of him. So he lost it. He got snapped. He got very angry, and he choked her to death.
Your explanation for that is you completely lost control.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Had she done anything to warrant her death?
Well, to a friend of mine, yeah. She ripped up a $30,000 car of my friend's. She threw paint all over the lady's house. She was a terrorist. So I think maybe on a subconscious level, I wanted to resolve that problem with my friend.
You see that, but that suggests, Robert, that you did give it some pre-thought.
Why?
That suggests that your motivation for killing her was what she'd done to your friend.
Well, I think
that doesn't sound to me, if you don't mind me saying, it doesn't sound to me like a spontaneous, out of nowhere.
Well, it was when I killed her.
Psychosis. It sounds like you wanted to punish her.
Well, on a subconscious level, absolutely. But on the conscious level, I didn't experience those type of thoughts at all, and I want you to understand that. So
I'm trying to understand.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So what motivated me to kill her on that compulsive level, it was because of that subconscious programming in my mind of how she violated my friend, all right? But that's the only thing I had against her, if that's the reason why I actually killed her.
During the interview process, he actually said to me, it's not like I go around killing people all the time, is as bizarre as anything anyone's ever said to me in my police career.
This is someone you've had an on-off relationship with for a year. Did you have any feelings of guilt or remorse?
No.
Nothing at all?
Never thought about it again, sir.
You never gave her any more thought?
No, not really.
When you think about it now, because I'm asking you, what do you think?
Don't.
What do you think about her now?
Nothing. It's like she didn't exist.
You have no thoughts about her at all?
No, not really. I'm being honest with you. I don't have a conscience, sir. All right. Do I feel remorse? No, I can intellectualize guilt. I can intellectualize remorse, but am I actually feeling it? No.
See, that's extraordinary to listen
to. It is not a great thing, sir. I want to be normal just like all you people. But my life has been anything but normal.
So is Spahowski a product of where he grew up, or was he born this way? A ticking time bomb, predisposed to kill? The answer to that may lie here, in the farmlands of Elmira, New York.
When you don't have a conscience, you don't think about the repercussions, right? You just want the pork chop. You don't care how you got it.
There is a serious drug problem in the city of Rochester in the 1980s. Crack cocaine is an epidemic, and people wanting to sell crack cocaine are killing each other over the right to turf.
By the mid-80s, Robert Spahowski is a regular face on the main streets of Rochester, upstate New York.
I lived in a very violent world, sir. I was a hardcore crack addict for 15 years, and addictions always controlled my life and my thinking.
I first heard of Spahowski during the late 80s. He was kind of a jack-of-all-trades type guy, an opportunist. He was involved in street crimes, burglaries, drugs, drug dealing, male prostitution.
Rochester was perhaps the ideal playground for a killer like Spahowski. But where his story began could not be any more different. I mean, the curious thing to me is, unlike most serial killers I've interviewed, where normally there's a pattern in their lives of abuse at some stage, physical or sexual, that's driven them to be the way they are. There's an appalling upbringing, terrible parents. You had none of that.
None of that. When all things go bad in my life period, I go back to my childhood because that's where I feel the love.
So tell me about the early years and what life was like for you.
Life was great. My father owned his own business, a grocery store. We owned 40 acres of land, a nice farmhouse. We could deer hunt, we could fish. So I never went without lacking.
Was it a loving household?
Absolutely.
Both parents?
Yeah, I loved my mother as much as I thought I could.
And she was loving to you?
Absolutely. She was a gem.
Well, what values did your parents try and instill in you?
Honesty, not to be hostile, be open-minded, all the positive things.
And yet you've led the opposite life.
Yeah.
I mean, a life of dishonesty.
And I don't understand that part of it. I don't. It's like I'm possessed with a different person in me. It's like a Dr. Jekyll, Dr. Hyde type thing. I can't explain it.
Spahalski also admitted to another crime that happened back in 1991 in Webster. The murder of 40-year-old Charles Grande. Spahalski told police he used to run a male escort service, and that's how he met Grande.
Charles Chuck Grande.
Yes.
He was 40. He was someone you met on the bar scene. He was a sexual partner. Was that in your existence as a male prostitute?
Yes.
He was paying you for sex?
Yes.
Charles is my brother, and we were growing up, I always called him Chuck.
Charles Grande was bisexual. He was a landscaper from Rochester, lived in the town of Webster.
Chuck was so much fun to be around. He was everyone's favorite. Mine, my mom, my dad, because it's just, his personality was just, if you knew him, you loved him.
Well, that day, the reason he died, because that was 1991, and he called my phone number, and when he called that number, he won the lottery to die that day. And
he won the lottery to die?
To die that day. I was mentally fixated. At that stage, it wasn't a compulsive thing, it was fixating on homicide, and it wasn't particularly with him.
How did you kill him?
With a hammer. Yeah.
One blow?
Well, the first one kind of glanced off him and shocked him for a minute, but the second blow put him down forever. After I killed him, I was completely naked, and I lit up a cigarette, and I was sitting on his naked back smoking a cigarette. Thinking about it, I don't remember. That's how far gone I was, sir. And I forget what I was thinking, but was I in reality? No.
During the time that we spoke with him, he gives specific details that no one else would have known. He said that he turned up the thermostat to throw the police off and the medical examiner off to show that the body may have been there longer.
That was just an Adrian Berger type thing.
Because you'd seen from your previous victim?
Yes, absolutely.
That heat would decompose a body?
Absolutely. I was there. Out of all the homicides, his bothers me the most.
Why?
Because there was a form of premeditation in his death. Because I did specifically go there with a hammer. So that's premeditation. So I feel bad about that. Even though I was in a fixated, even though I was in a psycho mode of homicidal fixation, I still feel guilty because I still have presence of mind of knowing I had that hammer.
I mean, again, I would say, just hearing this from you,
yes,
that both with Adrian Berger and with Charles Grande, in both cases, it seems, there was a premeditated feeling that you were having to do something bad to somebody. Neither of them seemed like completely spontaneous acts of violence. It's been in your head,
yes,
simmering.
Absolutely, sir.
Ready to blow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I guess I never really thought about it.
20 years before Charles Grande was bludgeoned to death with a hammer, a store owner in Elmira was murdered the exact same way. And the killer? Spahalski's twin brother, Stephen. Do you still feel homicidal urges?
No.
Never?
Well, if you push my trigger, you're done. But
you see that
if I feel threatened.
Right, but that in itself.
But that's normal. That's self-preservation. If it's not about self-preservation, I don't feel homicidal at all, sir.
But what you just said, I mean, that sends a chill down my spine, frankly. I mean, what you're saying is if I press the wrong trigger with you in this interview,
Absolutely.
you might feel homicidal.
Absolutely. It's called genetics, sir. It's called genetics. My twin and I were born with killer instincts, sir.
The Spachowski brothers are that rare thing in the annals of crime. Twins, both murderers, who've killed separately. Yet their 5 siblings went on to lead completely normal lives. What was it that made these twins killers? Have you been able to work out why you think that you and your twin brother went down one path and your siblings another?
Absolutely. Genetically, my twin and I were born without a conscience. From day one, when I dropped my mother's birth canal, I've always been the epitome of social dysfunction.
The Spachowskis came to my attention probably around 1970. They're a little hard to tell apart. They're essentially juvenile delinquents.
It was a competition, outdoing one another, but was it social misdirection, how we were behaving? Absolutely was, sir, right? And we were a pain in the balls with a lot of people out there to satisfy our adrenaline rushes.
Were you surprised when Stephen, who was just 16 at the time, when he killed Ronald Ripley?
No.
Stephen, for reasons that are unclear, picks up a hammer and hits him over the head. Victim falls down the stairs to the foot of the stairs. Stephen pounces on him, turns him over, and stabs him until he's dead.
But he hit him over the head with a hammer.
Yes, he did.
He then stabbed him in a frenzied stabbing 40, 50 times.
It was only 13 times.
Only 13?
Yeah.
I mean, you say only 13, but to take a knife and stab a human being 13 times, to me, is an unthinkable thing to do.
Absolutely.
You seem to think it was reasonable?
I'm going to be honest with you. He resolved it his way, and I'm just, all right, you killed him, good for you. Again, I don't have a conscience, sir.
I mean, people who don't have a conscience tend to be categorized as either sociopaths or psychopaths.
Well, I am considered a sociopathic psychopath because I don't have a conscience.
Very often in layman's terms, we say that sociopaths are made, very often by lives of childhood abuse, but psychopaths are born. Then I believe that he could be the rare example of the innate bad seed.
They're 2 peas in a pod. They got the same chromosomes, whatever, and they just don't have that social control.
How did you feel when you learned that your brother, several years ago, had died, your twin brother?
I felt relieved because I think he's in a better place. Like me, he never had a chance to function. We're not functionable. I mean, I can function in society, but not in the way you people genuinely do.
Did you love your twin brother?
Absolutely.
But you say you're not capable of a conscience, either of you, and yet you were capable, you think, of love.
I don't experience the emotional depth you would feel toward your loved one being lost or something like that. When my father's father died, my grandfather, I laughed my balls off at his funeral because I knocked on his forehead. It was rock hard. We thought that was hilarious, right? As your kid.
It was an open casket.
Yeah, absolutely.
You actually...
Yes.
You found it funny that his forehead was...
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to feel that hardness, you know.
And you burst out laughing.
Absolutely. My father was pissed off about that.
Well, I'm not surprised. It's his father.
Yeah.
It's pretty disrespectful.
Yeah, well, I wasn't thinking like that. It was an automatic, kids are like that, I guess. Yeah.
The first time we ever saw him in person, I felt like I was looking at a monster. And he turned around, he looked at my husband and I, and he said, "You want to tell me why you keep looking at me?"
Between 1991 and 2005, there appears to have been a 14-year gap in which Robert Spachowski didn't kill anybody. The reason? A woman called Christine Gonzalez.
I wrapped my arms around her and looked her in the eyes.
Did you ever tell her that you loved her?
Yeah, because I knew I would never see her again, sir.
I saw Robert Spachowski on the street many times when I was a uniform officer and would roll my window down and say things to him, not necessarily pleasant.
If Spachowski is a natural-born killer, as he claims, could he really resist the urge to kill for 14 years? Between 1991 and 2005, there appears to have been a 14-year gap in which you didn't kill anybody, which seems unusual, given that you killed so soon after a previous death before. Why was that?
Oh, well, I think in part is I had a good girlfriend that I felt responsible for.
Christine Gonzalez?
Yes.
How did you meet her?
I was, at that time, I was managing a bunch of apartments for a realtor. And I rented her apartment, and a nice one in the back with a panoramic view of the gorge. And that's how I met her.
And were you in love with her?
I love her, but I've never been romantically in love with any woman, which I regret. I mean, I had feelings for her, but not deep like the kind of relationship I would really like with a woman.
Did you ever tell her that you loved her?
Yeah.
And she did you?
Yes.
Christine and her kids, they're very fond memories of him. Apparently when he was not being a psycho killer.
She had 3 young grandchildren.
Yes, she did.
And you became quite close to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
In fact, they knew you as Uncle Boo Boo.
Yeah. They were my social anchors, and that's what I think kept me from going out there and hurting other people, yeah.
Were you capable of genuine emotion towards those kids?
Absolutely. I taught them kids fishing, blowing up propane tanks, riding bikes. I was a good mentor toward those kids.
Yeah, he's definitely creepy. You know, he's like what, 6'4" or something like that. But I never felt that, you know, he would try to harm any of us for any reason.
Do you miss that world that you had in those years?
Yes, absolutely.
You know, you had a loving relationship with a woman that...
Do I miss that? Yeah.
Clearly you cared about?
I grew up to be my own worst enemy. I flaunted my life, took life for granted. Why I did that, I don't know.
Spachowski's life with Christine Gonzalez, he says, stopped him from killing. But on the night of November the 4th, 2005, that compulsion to murder returned. You then killed Vivian Irizarry, who was a close friend.
Very good friend.
Of your love, Christine Gonzalez.
Absolutely.
You described her as being like a sister to you.
Absolutely.
Did you have any previous
ill
will towards her?
No, I love that lady to death. I would never hurt that lady, but I still ended up killing her.
The night before he turned himself in, I was at his door, knocking on his door, asking him, "Where's my mother? No one's talked to her all weekend. Where is she?" And he said, "Haven't seen her since Friday."
I remember Robert saying they were smoking crack, and that at some point he looked at Vivian and she was no longer his friend Vivian.
He said that he had smoked so much crack that her face changed and she looked like a demon.
What I experienced when I killed Vivian Irizarry is it's like time suspended itself into slow motion. And it wasn't in a positive way. It's like the universe was breaking up or something. It was weird. It was very surreal.
Initially, he bludgeons Vivian, and then to complete the act, he strangles her, and he actually put a ligature around her neck, and then he used a garrote, which tightens it down. And that was still on her body when I located her in the basement.
Had I ever had a case like that? Never before and never since.
Once you realized you'd killed her, this person that you loved, like a sister, did you have any feeling afterwards?
No. With mental illness, that's just collateral damage.
Collateral damage?
It's chilling, I know, but when she came to my house that day, I wasn't thinking about killing her, but she still ended up dead because I developed a compulsive homicidal psychosis. What triggered me to kill her? I have no idea. It's a mental illness.
Our argument was, yeah, there was the devil. The devil was that little white rock that he smokes up every hour on the hour.
When we asked the question, Are the drugs what made Robert Spahalski commit these murders? The bottom line is the drugs are a perfect excuse, especially with his mental illness, for that impulsivity to reign supreme.
When Christine realized you confessed to killing her best friend, how did she react?
I have no idea. I never seen her from the day I turned myself in.
You never saw her again?
No. Before I turned myself in, I walked her to work. I wrapped my arms around her and looked her in the eyes and says, "Honey, I love you. No matter what happens, I love you." She looked at me in a quizzical way, and I just walked away from her. I looked at her one last time, and I never seen her again, sir, because I didn't want Christine to see her best friend being carried out of that house, which is my primary concern. This is why, basically, I turned myself in.
When he kisses Christina on the cheek and says, "I love you," he is emulating normalcy. Not to say he really is ethical or he feels remorse or regret, but he feels like this is something that a good person would do, and he owes it to Christine because she has believed in him like nobody else for 14 years.
I painted myself into a corner when I killed somebody in my own house. Could I get rid of Vivian Irizarry's DNA, her blood all over the place? No. So I turned myself in, shut myself down before I did something stupid.
On that day, Spahalski confessed to not one, but 4 murders, including Adrian Berger, Charles Grande, and his neighbor, Maureen Armstrong. But now he's changing his story.
I just thought that Maureen Armstrong, even at death, she was a very beautiful looking woman. But I did not kill Maureen Armstrong, sir. I did not.
Ever since last November, when Robert Spahalski walked into Rochester Police Headquarters and confessed to killing 4 people, we've heard all about him, including his description by some media as a serial killer.
He certainly did not want that the stigma of being labeled a serial killer. That's not the company he wanted to keep.
Carrie Patterson's niece, Lorraine Armstrong, was Spahalski's first victim.
Do you think there's anything inside that man, a soul, a heart, anything?
No, there's nothing inside of him.
Whether Spahalski likes it or not, by killing 3 or more people on separate occasions, he is, by the FBI's definition, a serial killer. It's been over a decade since Spahalski confessed to those 4 murders, including his neighbor, Maureen Armstrong. But now he's telling me it was all lies.
Did I know her? Did she live across the street from me? Yes. Did I kill her? No. I was never in her dwelling.
But why would you have admitted when you made your confessions?
Well, those detectives walked me into that one.
Maureen Armstrong was a single female, African American. She was involved in prostitution and narcotics.
Robert Spahalski at the time lived right across the street in a large apartment building. It was New Year's Eve. And he said he went over there to use drugs with her and have sex with her. He caught her taking money from him, and he became violent. They were already high, and he strangled her.
I just took the bullet for her death so that her mother, after 15 years of not having any closure, I gave her spiritual closure and social closure, saying, yes, I killed your daughter, but I didn't, trust me.
But you gave details which only the killer would have known. How can I believe you?
I don't care if you do or you don't.
I'm sure you don't. I'm just saying, how can I?
He mentioned that he had taken a cord and wrapped it around her neck. I says, well, was there anything on the cord, or was it just a plain cord? He says, well, it was attached to an iron. That is certainly something only a person responsible for that crime would have known.
Robert Spahalski now says that he didn't actually kill Maureen Armstrong. I think this is because he doesn't want to be tagged a serial killer. But you can't come close to believing him.
When I opened up that can of worms with Maureen Armstrong, taking the bullet for that, I was profiled, and I made a big mistake. I did, because the FBI profiled me as killing prostitutes like Maureen Armstrong. I never killed a prostitute in my life. I was a prostitute back in those years as a male escort, bisexually. But anyway, yes, I am a serial killer because I did kill multiple times, but I do not enjoy killing people. And the people I did kill, They didn't suffer, sir. It wasn't about torture, sex, money, nothing. It was just spontaneous. You're dead.
How many people are lucky to be alive without even realizing it because you may have come close to having that feeling about them?
I wasn't out of control like that, sir.
You were completely out of control with the murders you committed.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
So my question really is, how many other times have you felt like that and had a thought about somebody and then not executed the killing?
I don't know. I have a lot of blackouts because of crack. It takes its toll on her.
You must have had other homicidal thoughts.
Oh, probably did.
Amongst many troubling aspects of this case, one in particular I find hard to believe. That 14-year gap. Spachowski says he resisted that compulsion to kill. It doesn't seem plausible, does it? You clearly were capable of extreme violence, taking people's lives and not really caring.
Yes.
It has to be possible that you took other lives. I just want to ask you one more time. Did you take other lives that we don't know about?
Absolutely not, sir. Absolutely not.
And if you had, you would tell me?
Yes, sir.
There's one picture I just want to show you.
My mother was completely heartbroken when Chuck died. I don't know if she even wanted to live anymore.
I seek comfort because of like how good you felt with your mom. You only get one. So yeah, I always seek comfort. He doesn't deserve to live, I would say.
No, I don't think I'd be happy when he dies, because he's just a sad person.
Do you get any visitors here?
I got one good friend that I knew back in the day from 50-something years ago. She's come into my life, and she helps me with money, packages, conversation.
Why?
Because she knows what's in my heart. She knows that whatever I did, it was because of drugs or something.
She believes that underneath all this,
absolutely, sir,
there's a good heart.
She believes in me, absolutely.
And do you believe there's a good heart underneath it all?
Absolutely.
But if you had a good heart, Robert, you would be capable of looking back on the terrible crimes you've committed,
right,
and expressing genuine remorse and guilt, and you'd apologize.
How many times can you kick yourself in the ass doing that in your life periods? How many times do I have to do that for the rest of eternity?
In our minds, there's no doubt that he has committed more murders. Specifically, we're very convinced that he murdered Hortense Greatheart.
As we say in the police world, I liked him for that case a lot.
This is Hortense Greatheart, and I know you know who she is, right? You remember her?
Yes.
She was a downstairs neighbor of yours. You knew her well?
Not really. I've seen her around. She lived right downstairs from me.
In 2003, she was strangled.
Yes.
In the way that you strangled the two women that you do admit killing. The thermostat was turned up, which is what you did.
I don't believe that. It was a summer day.
Well, the thermostat was turned up.
There were just too many similarities. He lived in the same building. She was strangled. And then there's the thermostat.
And that is why the police strongly believe that you must have been the one who killed her, because you strangled her and the thermostat was turned up. Is what they believe.
Yes, absolutely.
Did you kill her?
No. I'm just being profiled. That's all.
We promised him that the DA's office had no interest in charging him with any more crimes, that he was locked in and locked down forever, and he wouldn't admit to it. I don't know why.
You could give comfort to the family of Hortense Greatheart.
Yes.
If you did kill her, you could give them comfort now in just admitting it.
Yes, absolutely can.
It wouldn't change your life, but it would dramatically change theirs. It would give them some closure.
Absolutely. But I can't provide that to her at all.
Robert Spachowski, even if he killed Hortense Greatheart, is not going to admit to it because he gets nothing out of it. It's also possible that he may have selective amnesia and simply not remember it. He may get flashes that come back and haunt him, but he's never really sure if they're just kind of LSD flashbacks or whether he really did them. So why confess to something that he's not sure about himself?
Finally, for all the relatives of those people you did kill,
Yes.
this is a chance for you to say something to them.
Yes.
What would you like to say?
I would say that I'm very sorry that I devastated their lives, that I took their loved ones' lives. I did not mean to. It was mental defect. They died. Anybody that I killed died relatively quick with no pain. That's what I'd want them to know, sir. Yes, but it wasn't out of disrespect or because I got off on killing them. It wasn't about that.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you. You're more dimensional than these other interviews I've had, sir.
More what, sir?
More dimensional. You've gotten more deeper. You're the kind of person I've wanted to talk to about these deeper issues.
Yeah.
Am I insane? Most likely, absolutely.
Yeah.
But not insane where I don't know where I am.
Right. I understand. It was quite an unsettling interview, particularly when very early on, he almost put a threat down. You pressed the wrong trigger point, and I won't be responsible for what happens. I've never had that in any interview I've done with any criminal. And unlike other serial killers I've interviewed who pick on random people they don't know and kill them, he only picked on people he cared about or even perhaps in his own way loved. And that's what makes him so unique and so dangerous.
I'm Emily Campagno. As a lawyer, I've spent many hours with convicted felons inside the walls of prisons. Those are conversations and experiences you never forget. Now, Piers Morgan is joining me here in a slightly less intense environment to take you inside the killer interview. When I was a young attorney, the first time that I interviewed a convicted felon inside prison, I'll never forget when the security guard started walking out and shut the door. I turned to him and I said, "Wait, you're leaving?" And he said, "Yeah." What was it like for you when those doors shut?
Look, there are some people interviewed in this series. Robert Spahalski would be one, where I was warned he'd broken out of handcuffs with his own bare hands, and I should be careful about angering him. And there's a good reason for that, because in a flash, he killed people.
So he threatened you, and there were no handcuffs. So what did that feel like?
It felt intimidating. I mean, that was probably the most intimidated I've ever felt interviewing any inmate ever, because I knew he was capable of, on a whim, even to people that he was very close to, girlfriends, friends of long standing, on a whim, on the toss of a dime, he could be explosively violent. And then he would have no remorse. He had no remorse. This wasn't some guy just killing random people in the street, which some of these killers are. This was somebody killing people he knew, but just because one day he woke up and they annoyed him. And I said, you know, should I be concerned? And it's a really quite unsettling exchange when he sort of explains that if I was to trigger in the wrong way, then yeah. It was pretty clear what he was getting at, that, you know, I should be careful. And I was careful, I'm not stupid. And he's a very big guy, capable of explosive, extreme violence. And I'd already been warned by one of the prison officers, be careful with this one.
There's a difference between anxiety and fear. Did you feel fear ever?
I would say more adrenaline. I don't think I was fearful, I was wary. I do remember after that a long drive back to New York City, about 5 hours from upstate. And I do remember when I got back to my hotel feeling really weird. And I had a long shower and I glugged a little bit too much wine a little too quickly. And I felt very unsettled, the most unsettled I've ever felt after an interview. He really did quite disturb me.
We saw your audio guy taking his microphone off. What did your crew think of this?
we all came away afterwards, and it was during the COVID pandemic, so we wore masks, which added a kind of surreal feel to it anyway, made it all feel a little bit creepier. It was quite a small room, so it got very intense, the interview. And afterwards, I remember my top producer just said to me, "Wow." And I went, "Yeah." And we walked away and we were like, that was just incredible. But it was because the atmosphere was charged. He was, throughout the entire exchange, for over an hour, radiating a menace, which I found quite intimidating.
Why do you think he cared so much about being labeled a serial killer?
He was strangely concerned about how he was labeled. And yet, when I really pushed him about how did he feel about these victims who he had brutally murdered, he felt nothing. He had nothing. So in a way, he was a psychopath, sociopath. I mean, there's not a lot of difference between the two things, but it means really they're not capable of normal human emotion. If you or I killed somebody in a moment of explosive rage, we'd probably regret it for the rest of our lives, and we would feel awful afterwards. He felt nothing. Even in the immediate aftermath, surrounded by blood and mayhem from his murderous, barbaric behavior, he felt nothing. Never looked back. And that to me added to the sense of danger about him. Because somebody that can do that and feel nothing about the victims at all, and has never given them another moment's thought until I've asked him about them, that's scary.
Why then suddenly do you think he turned himself in?
I don't know why he turned himself in, and he wasn't really particularly plausible in his own version of why he'd done it, other than he just decided to do it. I mean, he wasn't a guy that thinks like a normal human brain anyway. So I think almost everything he did was kind of inexplicable, including randomly turning himself in. There was no real reason he should have done that, other than he did it. No real reason he should have killed the people he killed, other than he just woke up one day and felt like it, literally.
Do you accept that as certainly not justification, but as his reason for? Do you feel satisfied as a journalist or as a human that while that explanation is woefully inadequate and of course never acceptable, it's his reason and therefore case closed?
What I've learned about psychopaths, and I think he is one, is they are medically wired in a way, or chemically wired really, in a way that doesn't allow them to feel normal human emotion. And once you know that about somebody, the rest is more explicable, because he's one of those guys. He is devoid of normal human emotion.